Hi everyone, my name is David Ogilvy, and this is the podcast where I explore what it means to live, feel, and work better. Today I'm joined by Isaac Kakone, who shares how chronic pain after a life-changing motorcycle accident forced him to change everything about his life. Isaac shares his experience of chronic pain, addiction, and depression, and how to step into your greatest self. So, hi Isaac.
How are you, David?
I'm very good, thank you. Welcome to the Resilience Development Podcast. I'm so excited that you're here because I've seen your story, and it is one hell of a story. It's a story I think needs to be out there, not just because it's a story of resilience and inspiration, but where you're actually coming from. I think that needs to be shared with people. So I'm hoping that's what we can do today, if that's okay with you.
Oh, well, I'd be more than happy. I think that was one of my main goals, is to get out there to show people that we are. First of all, thank you very much, David, for having me. I got to see some of your podcasts. Truly, I love what you're doing because you're sharing value. That's what I always call it, is as long as there's value, there's something there, then it's you're spreading positivity in a world full of darkness. That's how I see it. So thank you very much for having me here. And I'm grateful. Couldn't complain.
Yeah, you're very welcome. In my experience, people are amazing. The people are amazing, and if you sit down and you take the time to listen and really just talk to people, we all have amazing stories, and I think you have an amazing story to tell. So I'm just going to let you tell it. Right, I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm just going to be quiet. I'm just going to listen. So tell us your story, Isaac.
Okay, thank you. My story. I think, again, my story, it's not so unique in my eyes. That's the beauty behind my story, is that I'm not unique. I'm born and raised in Canada from a very normal home, which means my parents were divorced. If we understand that the average today is divorced. Mm-hmm. So I come from a normal home, not the easiest of upbringing. I left my house pretty young. I was 14. I'd moved to Israel. Continued my, you would say, teen years, adult life there in Israel. I got married, had kids, and you would say about 3 years ago, I moved to Cyprus. I said I would start a bit there. I'd like to live on that island, get to see it out a bit. I had a job opportunity. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take it. I'm going to go there with my family. Got to Cyprus a couple of months after I'd been here. It was August 27, 2019. I had a motorcycle accident. And that's when you can actually say everything somewhat changed. So what had happened is I was driving my motorcycle. I'm not going to get into details. The court case never ends. Life goes on. There's not, suddenly you got into an accident, everything's okay, everything's on pause. So I'm still dealing with it. But what had happened is I was carrying someone. His weight had pushed me to the ground, not giving me any airtime. I wasn't driving fast. It was at about 20 kilometers an hour. But when I hit the floor, that's 20, 30 kilometers an hour versus cement, the body weight, the speed, etc., causing my left arm to actually explode. 95% of the arm, bone, tissue, everything had exploded. There was a bit of tricep skin left. I couldn't actually really feel the arm. And when I looked over, like my visor was open a bit, and when I was looking into it, I could see somewhat of the reflection. And to me, it looked like my arm had already been cut off. And my friend, who was, thank God, in the car behind me, ran up to me and said, "Don't move, your arm's still attached." But I remember hitting the ground, and you could call it unlucky, but my head had literally hit the pavement, tilting my body to the side and tearing all 5 nerves from actually the root of the brain. So anything about the nervous system, you know that you have your C, and then it goes T, which is the back. I had tore my C5, 6, 7, 8, which is a small one, and my T1, which is part of your back, shoulder, chest, and your whole left arm. So when I hit the floor, I knew something had happened because I could remember till today this electricity cord being ripped out of my head, causing my face to somewhat like squinch. It was burning. And then there was so much adrenaline that you don't really feel anything. But that was what I had felt. And I remember hitting the floor and I said, wow, like if there's God out there, which I believe there is, it's time right now to be like, okay, let me try to catch my life. Where did I go wrong? Am I a good person? And I just said, thank you, God, for whatever it was. And I didn't really know, but all I knew is I wasn't making it out of this one. Hard-headed, it was actually my second motorcycle accident in my life. But yeah, it was like I didn't learn from the first one. You know, sometimes people say, why do things happen to us? Why couldn't it be easier? We don't really realize how hard-headed we could be. Like sometimes you're supposed to learn something, and the only way you could learn it is through a hard time. I actually love to say that I believe in hard times more than good times. I would not want to take a human, bring him down to earth, and just let him know Eden. Why? Because he would not make it out in our world. The reality is that we go through a lot of filters and negative filters. I don't think there's been a time like this in the last 100 years, physically, mentally, financially, but it's a hard time. So I've learned to appreciate hardships more than a good time. I find a lot of peace within a hard time. But going back to the story is they had brought me to the hospital, and when I got there, they said, we're going to have to amputate the arm, whatever's left. There's nothing left. And he also tore the nervous system from the brain. So, like, we can't even connect it if we want. My family, thank God, my friends didn't allow it. They're like, no, we have to see what we could do. And there was actually a specialist that's a city and an hour away, Limassol. And he was actually on his way from the airport. He had just got back from Dubai and he was on his way home. And my friend had called him and he's like, you know what, just send me the kid. I'll take care of it. But I need to tell you this. If this is the case, his arm is open entire, don't give him any painkillers, nothing, because he won't wake up in the operating room. So just leave him as is if this is the case. So we signed ourselves out from the first hospital. By the time he got there, by the time I got there, 4 hours had went by. It took almost 5 hours before I got onto an operating bed. All of this feeling complete nerve damage, the explosion of the arm, the brain sending signals, going crazy. And this is what people don't realize. Sometimes pain is so intense, it can kill you. It can, and if not kill you, put your brain way off system. Like try to get back from that and you might not ever come back. So you have to somewhat be careful of where this line is. There's not much awareness to what and how really the nervous system works. And especially when you tear it from the brain, the studies show that there's no healing. Like if you rip the brain, if you damage the brain, we can't really fix it. So try not to damage anything from there. They put me to bed. I remember like they got me into the room, they poured the alcohol on me to clean me up, to get me ready. And the second that touched my arm, it zapped me up. I was cold. I woke up, you would say a couple of hours later, 7-hour operation, long time. They had to put my arm back together like a puzzle. But after a couple of days, I was in intensive care the whole time. They were watching over me. My eye, like I said, the quench in my face was actually the nervous system somewhat getting zapped, and it kept me with hornet's eye. For 6 months, my eye was somewhat closed. My face had gone numb in the eye area. After a couple of days, I woke up, and the doctors came in, and they told me, ABC, this is what happened to you. And then they're like trying to explain to me with, medicine terminology, you're disabled. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, you guys are nuts. My arm is on fire. The same pain I went to bed with, screaming in agony. This is like, the only way I could explain it to you is getting your arm cut off. It's really cutting through the nervous system, everything, etc. It's pain in the neck and the head and the brain. What are you talking about? And he goes, no, the pain you're feeling. And that's when he tried to start explaining himself. What is chronic pain? And he's like, it's neuropathic pain. You had ruptured the whole nervous system from the brain, leaving you with A, B, C. And he's going through these things, and I can't understand them. More than that, they're giving me morphine every 4 hours in the vein because I can't deal with this pain. And after about 2 weeks, they come back into the room and they look at me and they go, look, what we could do is when the swelling comes down, the world believes in nerve transplants and reconnecting nerves as long as it's not from the root, which means if you cut the arm and it was just the arm that was cut, we could connect the nerves, go to physio, and God willing, your arm will work. And the statistics already show that it's a high number. But if you tear this from the brain, no one works on the case. Forget even going ahead and doing a nerve transplant. If you go to a doctor, and this is crazy because I went to visit Israel, I spoke with doctors in Canada, etc. And I asked them what, and they say, no, stiffen the arm. If you were lucky that they didn't cut it, stiffen it and just live your life like that. Why? Because it's the brain. And even the ones who have tried never made it. So he said, this we understand, but we believe differently. Again, the idea of your doctor bringing faith to life in the hardest of times, and that's, I guess, what we fall into, and that's what doctor shopping is. We'll get into it. But I ended up going ahead and feeling like there was maybe a bit of hope. Let's do this nerve transplant, even from the brain. And he actually said something phenomenal. He's like, by the way, 50% of my cases recover. Mm. I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, in the world, it's maybe 10% of the world even goes through it and not much people make it. He's like, but in my case, I choose people that could do it. It has a lot to do with physically how strong you are, mentally how strong you are, physiotherapy every day. It's going to be multiple operations, 7-year plan in the future. Don't even look at short term. He said, but I could send you to some people. You'll see it worked out, etc. I said, yes, of course. My insurance paid it. Thank God I was lucky because most people, again, even their insurance don't, you end up cutting the arm. So after about a month, we did the operation. They took 5 nerves from my rib cage, put it into my left arm, and connected it to my brain. I call my doctor Frankenstein. That's what I do. I actually, in his office, I know people that they're with me at physiotherapy. They lose their thumb in an explosion or an accident at work or something. And what he does is he takes the big toe and he puts it as the hand. And they end up using this big toe as their thumb. So they actually have the use of their hand again. So it's phenomenal what he does. But again, those are nerves that are cut in the middle. You, it's a different case. Have at it. I spent 2.5 months at the hospital. And that was because my mom was pushing me to get out. If not, I would have stayed. She had came from Canada to be with me. But within those 2.5 months, I became addicted to opioids at every amount. I was on morphine. I was on pethidine. I was on codeine, Xanax, oxycodone, everything altogether, painkillers, pain stimulators, Lyrica, and antidepressants because I couldn't control my emotions anymore. That's where I guess the dark loop starts, is they release me from the hospital. And when you leave the hospital, you're not getting the same type of drugs you were getting at the hospital. There's no more needles. It's just tablets of morphine. I used to be taking 100 and something of morphine every 4 hours, 120 milligrams to 120 split up throughout my day. I couldn't deal with the pain. And you somewhat fall into this, and this is what it is. It's really hard to say, but you become a victim. You become a victim with the reality that you're within. And it's not your fault. No one deserves to suffer this. I don't wish any type of pain, especially like this, upon my enemy. But it's not, the cards you pick, it's the cards you're dealt. And these are things you can't understand. I'd never known what chronic pain was. The worst, phantom pain I had heard of. I did the military for about 2 years, a year and a half. I'm like, okay, phantom, but I never understood the amount of pain some people go through physically. And the scariest thing about chronic pain is that sometimes it's a flare, it goes on and off, minus 24/7. It's been 3+ years that not a second. And this is my subconscious, my conscience, and what I like to call my unconscious conscience knows that we're all suffering physically. And it becomes a very, very dark game on the mental. And you're not helping because you're overusing dopamine, which isn't pure because you're taking it from morphine. You're abusing all sorts of drugs, also from antidepressants, which is you're going back and forth. You're taking a drug for dopamine to go to an antidepressant to go back to a dopamine. They're not even related anymore. But hey, no one deserves to live in pain. We don't know what to do with you. So here, have this. I think that it was the craziest year of my life because 50% I don't remember. Whatever I remember is really painful. And it somewhat, though, taught me so much. I ended up, after a year, falling into attempted suicide. Over a month straight, I used to tell my wife, I'm done. I used to eat pills. I used to abuse up to 1,000 milligrams of drugs a day easily in a serving. And I would take 2-3 servings a day like this. And I would drink if I thought it would help the process. Now, people somewhat think it's selfish. I have 2 kids. My wife was pregnant when I had the accident. My daughter was born into a world of trauma. But when you're in so much pain physically, mentally, and you're not able to, you have children who have no father, like they say, you have a wife with no husband and a house without a home. That means for a man, which his characteristics are to find purpose, to provide, to give, to live on that instinct, it's all taken away in a second. I can't be a father. I can't be a husband. I can't do anything. And the opposite, I'm only inflicting a lot of pain. So the rational thing to do is probably just end it. It'd be easier for everyone. Maybe I'll leave a bit of pain, but the long game is I don't cause any trauma, don't cause any damage, and they don't have to see this on a daily. And I remember my brother one day asked me, he's like, yo, Isaac, do you ever contemplate suicide? Like, what's up with you? And I said, what are you talking about? You're so unaware. And those are one of the things I realize is you're not even aware that you're trying to hurt yourself anymore. It's just the easier, better thing to do. That's it. And this is the life you take on. They say that 70% of heroin addicts in the Western culture come from the opioid world. 7 out of 10. 700 in 1,000. That is a ridiculous number. And it's crazy because I remember if any of my friends came over and I knew that they did any sort of drug, I would ask them, yo, is there a drug you could get me? And it wasn't because I was a junkie. This is where people don't understand the thin line of trauma, pain, and addiction is that Dr. Gabor Mate, by the way, if anyone doesn't know his research, go check addiction. It's really connected to our trauma. And the trauma is something that could happen today. It happened 100 years ago or before you were even born. You don't know where it will come. But I remember that I was done. And 40%, by the way, of chronic patients go through multiple suicide attempts. I'm not unique. And this is, I think, one of the biggest learning points for me when it comes to awareness is you're not unique. After a year, and this is crazy, my arm was actually shattered into my left arm where they had connected somewhat my elbow and my shoulder because, again, everything exploded. So they put titanium. The titanium broke into 2 pieces, completely shattered into 2. We don't know how. The doctor could only tell me it's bionic. You're bionic. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, look, the only thing we could do is get you back into the operating room, reoperate you, put in a thicker piece. Hopefully that'll hold everything together. It's bad luck. And I remember just being like, wow, this is crazy. Like, how does all this bad luck could happen to a person? Again, I'm the victim. And it's somewhat true. It really is true. I've been on my own for so long. I didn't grow up normal. Everyone has trauma. But again, I'm also not unique. So they get me inside the room and look how far, and this is something I've learned in my life. Where are you? What are you thinking about? Where is your thought process? Because listen to how sick I was. I remember telling my wife, the doctor said, you're going to come back in 4 days. So I went home 4 days with my arm broken, not moving. And I looked at my wife, I told her, the last time I felt a vacation from this pain was when I was at the hospital, when they were giving it to me in the vein at all times, every 4 hours. They've known my case for over a year now. I'm getting hospitalized. At least I'll be able to get into a hospital, get morphine and everything in the vein, and it'll somewhat ease the pain so that in 2 weeks when I get back out of the hospital, I'll have strength to fight another year. 2-3 nights before, I tried to kill myself. And look at what I'm selling, what crap I'm selling myself. Oh, I'll be able for in 2-3 years. Dude, where are you? But that was my thought. So I went there thinking that I'm going to get a vacation from pain with drugs. And I get there, and within 15 minutes, I'm in my room. They're already first needle. Within an hour, I had 3 doses. And every time I called my doctor back, and I told him, listen, doctor, I'm still in pain. He gave me 1, 2, 3. I called him back again. He said, what are you nuts? He said, first of all, it's not legal to go ahead and poke people whenever they want. We understand your case, but from here, you need to understand you're a junkie. That was it. And it slapped me in the face. These are things you know. It's funny, we all know our flaws. We like to act like we don't, but a lot of people tell me, how do you know what you want? I know what I don't want. That's what I did. Because knowing what we want, no one actually knows until you understand what type of life you want to live. And that means you're going to have to get rid of the things you don't want in your life. It is a lot easier to pay attention to learn not what to do than what to do. And I promise you, you'll move way further in life, because there are so many things when it comes to morality, to your physical, to your mental, to your health, to everything that you have to keep on track. So I go ahead and I'm somewhat now stricken by life. I said, even drugs don't help me. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to go smoke. Nurse, who was new, looks at me, she goes, sir, you're not allowed to leave. Sir, get back in your bed. I look at her, I go, look, you're new here. I've been coming here over a year. Do me a favor. I pay my insurance, right? Which means I pay my bills. Leave me alone. If someone wants to talk to me, let it be my doctor, especially not you. You're brand new. You've literally been working here 2 months. Till then, I'm going downstairs to smoke. Went downstairs to smoke. Guys, that is the dumbest argument I've heard in my life. A nurse has all the rights to tell you, especially if they're taking care of you and you were just drugged by the hospital to help you with your problems. They have all rights to tell you get back into bed, irrelevant to what bill I'm paying. So I had realized only now, not now, but after this, that how unaware or how shocked are you in life when things happen? And are you truly living in the present? Because if you understood your job, you would have told me exactly what I told you now. Sir, it's irrelevant. Go back in your room. If you want to leave, then wait for your doctor to come give you permission. That's it. But she didn't do that. I went downstairs, and guys, I'm dosed up on 3 doses of morphine, and I'm smoking a joint. I'm also taking Lyrica from the morning, which are all these other drugs, but you could understand how lost, again, chronic patients love to talk about this brain fog. And I always say, okay, there is such thing as brain fog. Even people who aren't suffering or going through pain, they have a hard time to remember and catch their thoughts. Well, when you're living in a world full of instant gratification, it makes sense that 7 seconds is your span. And if you don't train that, it doesn't help. And to add morphine to the list is really going to shut you off. So I'm sitting there with this amount of drugs, and I'm smoking in front of the parking lot. And I'll never forget, it becomes a group of people that want to leave the parking lot, but they're putting in the ticket comes out. So they turn it over, and this becomes a group. So I say, okay, maybe it's Cypriots, right? But no, it's a hospital. You have all types of people. I can't blame the age group. Why? Because I saw a lady who was like 90 looking like she's lucky to leave. Sorry are the words, but really that was the state this lady looked in, to a lady walking out with a brand new baby. So I said, it can't be where you're from. It can't be your age. So why is everyone sitting there collectively lost? And I said, okay, what do they want? And then I said, okay, well, there's a moral to life. There's a structure. And this is something people forgot. People love to talk about human rights. I talk about my obligations for human rights, right? So the man's rights to owning that parking lot is everyone's obligation to pay it when he leaves, right? So most people scream about their rights, but they don't know what their obligations are. And the funniest thing is human rights is someone else's biggest obligation. It becomes really deep as an obligation. My connection with my wife is all about her rights, my obligations, her rights, and vice versa. This is how we actually are able to connect. So I said, okay, everyone's with their rights. Everyone's trying to do what is moral, but it's not working. So why are they, what are they all looking for? And I said, they're stuck. Go back to the beginning. What was the purpose? They're stuck. They want to go home after spending whatever, and they need to leave. They need to pay. Okay, so what are they looking for? They're looking for an exit. At that instant, I looked at the exit and I realized the gate was open. I was like, wow. The system has got up, and it's not bad. That's how we protect human rights and rules and owning things and keeping things in order. But the system has caused us to do so many little things we forgot the outcome. We completely forgot what we want. And I said, what are these people lacking right now? And this is some sort of self awareness. I'm like, okay, I get it. And I go back upstairs and I sit there and I start rethinking my life. That's when it was. It hit me. I said, okay, I must be seeing this wrong. I'm probably looking at the picture truly biased. I am truly a victim and I hate my life. And that is something I had to get to a point of being sick of who I am. I hated everything about me. My character had changed. I was a depressed person. I was always in pain. I was always talking about my pain. I didn't accept anyone to tell me how to deal with things. I was lost. And I'm sitting there, and the craziest thing, I spent 8 days there, 4 or 5 days out of that week that I was there. I even got my wife the next day to come downstairs to look because the gate was broken. This happened every day, multiple times a day, for like a week. How unaware are we of what we want? And where are we? And that's when I started to actually take accountability with my life. And I had started this recovery plan. And I called it at the beginning just retaking control of my life. And there were steps I did. And again, we call it resilience, uh, which I think is beautiful. Again, the value you bring in getting people that are resilient. It's not just a strength. It's not someone who overcame. It's a lifestyle. It's someone who understands things. And I call it awareness. So I believe that the core to resilience is based off of three things. And if you can take these three tools and inflict them in your life, you will see phenomenal change. And the first one is faith. Faith in God or faith in yourself, because you're going to need to have someone telling you something nice. The second one is going to be self awareness. You're going to have to become aware of your situation, which means if you're suffering chronically, 40% of us try to kill ourselves multiple times. It means that they're going to tell you that at least 10 to 15 years, you're going to live the rest of your life on pills, or at least 15 years. These are the statistics. No one's hiding them. And the statistics aren't the truth. They're just what we call today reality. It's a reality check. The truth somewhat lies behind that thin line of the people who overcome. So, yes, 90% of the people in my case don't heal from what I went through, especially physically. They're not able to bring the arm back to life. But there's 10% that have done it. And that is the truth. That is the honest truth. So you're going to have to somewhat become very aware of your surroundings and where you stand at the moment so you can actually choose. It's going to probably be the first time you've chosen something in your life. And the last one is kind of cliche, and I like it. It's a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. It's positivity. And when it comes to medical terminology, it's called the placebo effect, guys. And the placebo effect has shown us miracles in every field. That is what it is to be optimistic. And the opposite is nocebo, and that is pessimistic. People ask me, why is positivity so important? It might just save your life. And of course, all of this comes once you're sick of yourself, which means there's a self sacrification, a self nullification. You have to cancel out what you know to be willing to learn what you need for your future. And people take these things for granted and they fall into this really, really dark loop.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in there. A lot of echoes of the way we think about the resilience and where we show people how to be resilient. Because that's what frustrates me is, I mean, there are three types of resilience, right? One is the resilience that you're born with. We're all naturally resilient to different extents. The second type is you learn the hard way, stuff you're talking about, Isaac. So you learn the hard way. What's interesting is, my view is, you only learn the hard way if you're able to look at something through a lens of strength. If you look at it and look for meaning through a lens of weakness, you're not going to find that meaning. It's very hard to find meaning if you're looking at it through a lens of weakness. And that's why I'm hearing echoes of you. And then the third type of resilience is what we call restored resilience. It's a skills base. It's what we're passionate about. So it's taking things like optimism, it's taking things like self awareness, it's taking things like knowing where you want to be and having that purpose and agency and making them into skills so that when you need them, you can draw on them. It's like a toolkit for life. And that's not necessarily bouncing back. It's as much as going from good to great.
Good to better.
Yeah, exactly. Good to better. And why I thought was really interesting, just listening to your story then, was clearly you're able to talk about all of this from a position of strength, and you come across extremely well, right? It's obvious that you are passionate about where you've been and where you're going to. What was really interesting is when you said you were talking about being a victim. And it was that difference. It was that real difference that I saw in you. So you're able to talk about this big, massive thing that's happened in your life that's affected you and your family. You haven't let it define you. Yet when you talk about that moment where you had to define yourself as a victim, you could see that was hard for you.
Oh,
That was hard.
it's not, it's, you see, that's the scariest thing is we're all somewhat a victim in our own reality. And there's something you said that is, it's a tool I use every day, right? It's your, we call it in Hebrew ashkafa, your lens. How do you see things? Optimistic, pessimistic. If you have a lot of pain, there's probably a lot of expectation. And you see, the chronic world is very sick like that. We have a lot of expectation. For example, like I remember when I used to, and I see it all the time. People would be like, "Have you ever tried yoga?" Shut up, man! I'll
Mm.
slap you. What do you think? You're going to teach me something about pain? I've been suffering 3 years constantly. Like, what do you know? That is such an egoistic thing. No one else could understand.
Mm.
That is the victim. That
Yeah.
is where you are so wrong. Most of the world, and there's like 1 in 5 that you'll meet who somewhat suffer chronically. So how could you? And again, the expectations keep growing. Why don't they learn and understand how I feel? Excuse me, but I remember clearly telling myself, "Wow, I would have never understood what this crap meant if I didn't go through it on my own." How could I expect my doctor, my friends, my parents? And then it teaches you things. Resilience now to me is these tools that I follow. And this is called, for me, they were called my values,
Mm.
higher morals. This is what it is. And my project today is called Recovery Through Values. What had happened is most people tell you, like how do you know what you want? And I didn't know what I want.
Yeah.
But my biggest problem was depression. I was trying to kill myself. I was very unhappy. What's the opposite? Happiness. So I started identifying the things I don't like the most. I'm addicted. I'm not aware. I'm chronically blur. I'm not able to think. There were so many things that were going on in my life at this moment that I did not want. It was somewhat clear to get rid of. And somewhat, you see this happen to us men at the age of 25 to 30, and usually at the age of 27. It's known for the suicide gap for men is the first flip in life. People think that it's just a midlife crisis. Today, midlife crisis start at 25. They don't start at 40 anymore, which means that, again, it's lack of purpose. I don't, and this is the scariest thing is purpose is something you create. You can't go ahead and expect the world to bring you purpose. You got to bring to the world purpose. And this is why I always say, without you, without the physical other person, if it doesn't have to do with religion, with financial, everything, with even the addict and the man who chooses to kill, without you, I can't be who I am. And this is a very big concept, is realizing that you don't have much purpose without other people. So start learning to create purpose by finding things for others. And by doing this means you have to execute the negative things by you before you could even teach someone. So I had to look at what I didn't like. And the opposite to that was happiness. And I said, what is happiness to me? So you have to start digging. You have to start actually the thought process. Suddenly you're using your brain. You don't forget as much. You're able to keep an hour conversation going and not go too far off because you know how to reconnect your dots. So when you're going ahead and you realize these things and the way you're supposed to put them all together, you start taking accountability. And I decided, okay, if I can't give if giving to me is happiness, because it's always the memories, it's like something that is always within us. We feel purpose when we give to others. For us, when we're growing, that dopamine achievement, everything. But for others, it's even deeper. So I said, financially, I can't give. Physically, I can't give. Well, if I take control of my mental, I could give mentally, right? Yeah, and there's a lot of people in your case, right? Yeah, 40% are trying to kill ourselves all the time. Oh my God, Isaac, you have purpose, you have service. So I call them values. They're a code that I stick by, and people say, "What? How do you stay always motivated?" I'm suffering right now, and if I filterize my thoughts, it's as if someone's cutting my arm off with a hammer. That's how I feel right now. But I smile, and it doesn't bother me, and it has no control of my life. And it's only because I have value, moral. I have real purpose to life, which means empathy became a tool for me and a bunch of others. But today I have my code, and I test everyone to do this. Do you know who you are? What are your 5 values, your moral code to life? Mine is faith. And you look at faith because you can't start without faith in yourself or God. You need a certain amount of faith. From there, you're going to need self awareness. You're going to need to become aware of where you stand, not biasedly, literally like a bird's eye view, just clearly on top of it. And don't start pity partying yourself, but I was like this and I grew up like that and he did this or I did that and it's not fair and I got hit. You just need to look at the story because these are your cards. From there, you're going to need a lot of self-sacrifice, self-nullification, letting things go, literally trying to be able to cancel out what you know to learn something that is going to actually help you improve. I sat with my friend at a bar one day. I said, I'm normal because I come from a divorced home. And by the way, trauma starts way before. My pain wasn't only from my accident. It's a mental thing that causes you to realize that there's no more purpose. So you go back to all these things that maybe you never thought actually affected you, but they have a big thing. And I'm sitting with my friend, and his dad was an amputee who had chronic pain. And I asked him, how's your dad or whatever, or how was your father? Because I didn't grow up with a father, so how was it for you? He said, don't be fooled, man. Like, I didn't feel fatherhood at home. My father was an addict. He was always in pain, so he was always screaming. A lot of expectations. Until today, it's been 15 years, he still lives on drugs. And I heard him say that and it pierced straight through me. I said, oh my God, I have 2 kids. This boy is telling me he loves his father, but he never had a father. I spoke to someone else, asked him, how is your father? He told me, it's very hard to live in the shadows, this is the word he used, of a disabled person. He considered himself a shadow in a very traumatizing world. And I was talking to the kids. I wanted to know what is going to happen. And fatherhood became a very big one for me. And these things are verbs, by the way. Simon Sinek says it beautifully. Create the verb in your life where it's the action, it's what you're doing. So I don't value fathership, the idea, I value fatherhood. And I said, from now on, I'm going to do that. And then I was putting it all together. What do I want from here? If I'm trying to help people, help myself, help my family, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to guide my children for the future to be moral people. Because pain and chronic pain has taught me a lot. For example, I'm not the hero to my child's story. I can't be. If a car hits him and I decided to be the hero, and after 30 years, this is the situation, that story I built in my head has just been crushed. It's going to leave a very broken place within because you can't actually save your children. But what you could do is in a world with such little truth, with such little morals, you could teach them how to be moral people and teach them what it is to actually have leadership skills, adaptive leadership skills, not just technical. So I need to become what? A leader, a guiding tool for my children, for my future, for my life. So we go over them again. Faith, that was my first one. Awareness, that was my second. Self-sacrifice, my third. Fatherhood and leadership. This is how I live my life. Which means if I get into an argument with my wife over something that I want, where's the self-sacrifice, man? Self-nullification. I know you're hungry, you've been out all day, but right now you need to be a husband, not a man. Right? And when you talk with your kids, you need to be now a father, not a husband, not a man. People don't know the differences. They're all three different things. There's a lot of confused people yelling, what's the difference between man and women? Well, of course, I agree. A woman or a wife does not need a man. She needs a husband, which means you're going to have to learn tools like empathy, which is probably the runner up on my book. It's the one right after. Everything I do comes from that. So I use all of these tools constantly to guide me throughout my actions. And that's resilience. That's what it is. I am strong before the storm. I am a warrior in a garden. I am ready for the next step. And the truth is, I am the happiest I've ever been in my life. Ever. 28 years old, and I couldn't be prouder of myself because again, the statistics go against me, but I chose differently. Freedom of choice. It's a beautiful concept. Recovery through values.
Yeah, there are quite a few things in there because, for example, I'm a professional coach. So often what I find is people want something, a certain objective that they're working towards, but their inner dialogue is the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite to their objective. So they say, I want this. So to just use an example of husband and wife, they want a great husband or a great wife, yet their inner dialogue is all negative against that other person. Right? There's no empathy, basically, right? And they don't realize it. They don't realize it. And the second thing is people are stuck in my view of the world. People are stuck. And a lot of what I do when I'm working with people individually is I get them to bring their subconscious values into the conscious and say, if I make a decision based on my value, it can never really be wrong in the long term. It might be very difficult in the short term, but it can't be wrong in inverted commas in the long term because you're basing it on your values. And the flip side is also true. If you take action in the immediate term and it's not based on your values, it could easily work against you in the long term because it's going against who you are. And I think the other thing as well, the other thing I'm hearing about that resonates with me is this idea of strength and resilience being strength. I hear a lot of people talking about confidence and being able to commit to things, or rather, I'm not confident and I can't commit because they don't have that clarity. In my experience, you have to have the clarity to have the confidence to commit. And people look for confidence externally, Isaac. And actually, I would encourage people not to look externally, but internally. You should be looking at the strength internally rather than that external confidence. And the thing is, you were listing your pillars or your values, is they all had an emphasis on connection, which I think is
of course. That's real value. Everything else, I'm sorry, everything else was easy to get rid of. You see, when you lose an arm and you're always in pain, there's no amount of money, there's no vacation, there's like almost everything we lived for till now has lost value. So to me, it was like, I guess that's the gift. That's the upside, is it truly brought value to life. It showed me what it meant to actually live a purposeful life. So a lot of people take things bad way again, but I see it today. A man asked me the other day, he said, would you ever like want to go back? Or wouldn't I wish also the pain goes away? And I said, that's crazy for me because would I still do what I do now if I wasn't in pain? Would I still push my limits? Or would I fall into the habits that we all do? Because at 35 anyways, we're like 70+% on autopilot. So I asked myself truly, and then I realized to me, pain is motivating, I guess. And you need to find those, you said that most people don't live in a line with it, and in the future it hurts you. I spoke with someone the other day and they were crying, and I said, you're really not honest with yourself. Like, you'll never be happy, not at 40, not at 50, not at 60 or 80, because you constantly lie to yourself. You're out all day, you're smiling to people as if you're extrovert. You come home, all you do is complain about those people. That's very introvert. It's like you lost all your energy going out today, and you smile with one person, and then to your family, you're not smiling. They believe you're a hypocrite. The whole effect here is just breaking down just because you're not honest with yourself. You tell people to do A and then you do B. Keep lying to yourself. If we all know that a drop of water after 10, 20 years could destroy a rock, leave a huge hole in it, then why do you think one lie a day to yourself won't affect you? And it's crazy, but the filterization of thought process in the brain shows us there are crystals. We have see-through blood that is filtered from the right hemisphere to the left hemisphere through this little tube. And the color of that blood turns see-through. And when you look under a microscope, you could see crystals develop when they transfer from one side to the second. Now, what they say is as if you're getting an idea and you have to process it, and it has to go through a filter so you can actually bring it into conscience.
Yeah.
And they realize, though, that if someone woke up with a feeling and he said A was the feeling, tomorrow he woke up times 2 with that feeling in his mind. And when they checked under the microscope, it had doubled. So it's not 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 4, 8. Your crystals, so your feelings are, your biological brain is actually trying to go ahead and enslave you into the own reality you brought yourself into. This is our body. You're literally mimicking it nonstop.
That's I wonder if that's where crystallizing your thoughts comes from. That phrase, I need to crystallize my thoughts, and I
never thought of that. I never thought of
so
that.
there's that, and then you've got that attentional bias, haven't you? So whatever you attend to, you will become biased by it. Yeah, some really interesting things because you tend to think as I'm listening to you, and I'd love to be able to delve into your head and read some of the research that you've written because it tends to be very. You seem to have a very great knowledge of the medical side of things and the physical side of things and the philosophical things. Most of my work is on the kind of takes the cognitive side of things, and so it's interesting, and I'm kind of a little lost for words because I'm kind of going, all of that, and all of that you've been through. You sat there, you're smiling, you're laughing. Nobody would be able to guess you're in chronic pain. Your attitude towards it is extremely positive. And I think you can not. You said something earlier on. You remember when you made the yoga comment about somebody saying, "Have you tried yoga?" That's the downside of too much positivity. That's the toxic side because they're trying to help, but they're just being dismissive. That's the outcome, isn't it? They're just dismissing you. I don't think people suggest yoga because they want to insult you. I think they think,
No, God forbid.
It would really help, and they're trying to be positive, but they just dismissed everything. Absolutely everything. And I
But that's my fault for expecting from them to understand something that was almost impossible for me to understand. And that is how you take control of your life. If not, I'm just looking at the external plate. And that's what I realized. I was like, okay, as long as I keep complaining about these people who are just trying to be empathetic, they're just bringing up, they don't even know what world I come from. If I keep judging them, I'm never going to get out of this problem. So I have to stop.
That's the other bit I like. And I'm very, very similar as a very internal locus of control. I'm not fatalistic. It's not, I don't wait for things to happen to me. I make things happen. And I've always been like that ever since I was a little kid because of my background. I had to make things happen. I didn't come from the best background. And I'm just going to take you back to these ideas of values because I love the link you made to Sinek and verb. And what I'm kind of hearing is values in action. So I've got the story, I've got where you've come from, I've got that you are now living a life that is about your values and the impact that is having on you. How are you going to get this out to the world? What are you doing to get it out there? How can everybody be a little bit more Isaac? I can see it. I can see it as an hashtag. Be more Isaac.
Be more Isaac. Thank you. It means a lot. It's a lot of respect I don't think I deserve. But how would I get people to go ahead and? Well, first of all, I show my journey. I have a website. I show my journey. It's crazy. I'm about to say this, but my LinkedIn was canceled 2 days ago. I don't even know why. I sent a request. So till now I was using, you see, let me take it back a second. By the way, recovery through values not only helps you physically recover, which means that first of all, I lost my left arm. I don't know if people see or not, but I had lost the complete use from my neck down, right? And this is already after 3 years, and they said to cut it off, right? So you can actually, recovery through values can help you physically, mentally, and financially. So my purpose today is I'm a public speaker. And what I do is I speak about recovery through values. I bring value to a very dark world. And my niche is based around the chronic slash disabled, but trauma is, everyone has trauma. Everyone had to go through something traumatic to be able to keep moving forward in this world. So I realized that my niche, I just broke it down, but that's the way. I opened a LinkedIn, a website, and an Instagram. And what I do is I reach out and I try to go to different communities, different people. That's about it. And I find a lot of purpose in that, to show my journey on Instagram, where I could show people the physical of what I'm going through, my thoughts, if I'm just breaking down a word or two. As the business side of platforms, I use LinkedIn to connect with different communities, organizations. And what I want to do as a person is, well, if I'm so, what I call blessed today, then I would love the world to know that it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to be part of these statistics. You don't have to be lost. You could make a choice. Freedom of choice, guys. It is a very limited thing. People don't realize it's somewhat limited, but it always touches down to the cores of morality and value to life. That's what they are. That's where you have the freedom of choice. You see, we go home and a lot of people would say, freedom of choice, though, yeah, but everyone wants to choose good. I've seen a lot of people addicted to sugar who can't stop themselves from having a piece of cake. I've seen people take bad choices all the time. I personally, 26 years of my life, only chose somewhat wrong. I didn't stick to who I was. I wasn't honest with myself. So it will help you physically, mentally, financially. Anyone who needs me could always find me on my website, Recovery Through Values, or Isaac 3.0 on my Instagram. You could find me on LinkedIn hopefully next week. We'll see what happens there. If not, I have to recreate one. And that's about it. I'm very happy. It's crazy to say I have a purpose, a niche, a concept, and I'm one of those chronic people apparently who have given up and have really a hard time living. It's not, God forbid, given up, but they accept it. I'm sorry, I'm just going to put this in because this is one of the big things chronic pain has taught me is when I speak to depressed people, people who want to give up, people who have gone through attempted suicide, they have an acceptance. They talk about it and you hear the word accept a lot. And the reality is when your house is broken, you don't accept it. But for some reason, our mental, we're trying to accept, and even our doctors some of the time tell you it's okay, accept the process. No, process what you're going through, I agree. Filterize what you're feeling, I agree. Never accept. Those are boundaries. Acceptance is a boundary, it's a limitation to what you could see, and there is no limitations to how godly you are. That brain of ours that does everything originally on its own that we try to mimic through medicine. Guys, that should not just be accepted to what reality has told you. There is no such thing as acceptance to me. If I had to teach people what it meant to accept in our generation, it would be somewhat to learn how to process and to filterize what you're going through, to really internalize it, to process it as if you were standing in front of your own personal problem. Take action.
Through choice, by making a choice.
Of course.
But realistic, yeah. It is
we could go on forever because you don't want to put the boundaries of realism too high, right? You said you need to be realistic. That is very true, David. Like most people put the boundaries over here. Why? Because we have expectations to go back.
But I'm a realist. Amount of people I work with who say I'm realistic because it's relative, right? It is relative. Your definition of what was realistic before your accident would be probably very different now. Very different. And that's what, because when you were talking about optimism, Isaac, I mean, we define optimism as how you interpret a setback, how personal, how permanent, and how pervasive do you. And like most things in life, it's about getting that balance. And in some of our work, we measure people's levels of optimism and we show you how it sits with other people. Because it's really easy. For example, too much optimism can work against you. I could not take it personally. There's no permanence to it, so I'm not reflecting. and everything's separate. So I could just be very flippant because I could just say, well, what's the matter with you? Nobody's died, Isaac. Or I could say, you'll get over it. Or I might say to you, well, you just need to get on with it. It's only one thing in your life. It's not everything. And what I'm trying to be is optimistic, but it comes across as very flippant. So when I say realistic, I would make the point that and it kind of links to another point, and I might be being a bit clumsy. Is what I love about you is I think you give people hope, and I define hope as will and way. If you have the will and you have the way, then you have hope, and then you start to combine that with choice and the power of choice, and you combine that with coming from a place of value and what you value. That's real strength. That's what I'm seeing in front of me. Real strength. It's an amazing.
Thank
I
you.
think
Please.
you have an amazing story. But what's most amazing about it is I think it's only just begun. I think you got
No,
so much.
it,
I think it's just begun. I think you got so much. I think people could take so much from working with you. If people wanted to work with you, do you do one-to-one work, or is it, as you say, inspirational speaking? How do people get to work
so
with you?
I try to stay within the niche at the beginning. As you're growing in something, you always want to take that one subject. It's part of what chronic pain taught me. You take one thing at a time, you base it, you have your goals, you keep them realistic, which is somewhat within your realm of reach, and you're able to put out these goals. So when you work with one-on-one, it takes a lot of time, and I'm trying to grow for not just me. It's not me. And if I have an opportunity, you see, that's something about adaptive leadership is that you understand as a leader that you got to get people to learn to adapt, which means they need to take that 5%. So I believe in that 5% could just be hi. Say hi to someone who wants to kill himself. It might change his thought. And that is the beauty of it. Like 5%, you don't really have to do much. So if I could speak in front of 400 people who are suffering from trauma, depression, chronic, disabled, whatever it may be, and bring that 5%, because again, I know it's really mean, but most of the chronic world has created a, it's the way of life. It's become their way of life, that expectation, that pain, that it's not going away, that doctor shopping, looking for the next thing, etc. So it's very hard to work on one-on-one, but I would take anyone any day if they actually reached out to me and they're like, Isaac, I heard your story. You said you would help me if I needed that one-on-one. Then of course I'm here open, even for free. Why? Because without you, I'm not me. You guys bring purpose. People don't realize that. Without someone like me, I'm not me. I wouldn't have anything. There wouldn't be a service. There wouldn't be a purpose for my name. I spent a year within four walls. The name Isaac never came up, not even in my subconscious. So the fact that I even have a name, you can always reach out to me via the website, via Instagram, via LinkedIn. You could go ahead and leave me an email, any type of message. I do a video call, whatever you'd like, WhatsApp, phone call, whatever the person needs, of course, because I believe that everyone just needs to be heard at one point. The beginning state is always that empathy side, that someone's willing to listen and he won't judge you. He doesn't think anything, he's just listening. It's very important. So, yeah.
Yeah, we could do with more of that in the world. And I just make a point that I'm a big mental health advocate. And you said, you believe by saying hello to somebody, you can save a life. I know that. I've been in a situation where I know that to be absolutely true. And just that one reaching out and being brave enough to reach out, dropping that mask for a moment and brave enough to reach out to somebody can and does make a huge, huge difference. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you one question that I ask everybody. Right? Oh, my camera went there. Right. One question that I ask absolutely everybody, and then I'll let you go because I am very mindful as well. Is you are sat there in pain, right? You are sat there in pain. So let me ask you this one question. What advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time, Isaac, and give your younger self one piece of advice? What would it be?
Learn to fall in love with knowledge.
Do you want to
Learn to
say any
fall in
more?
love with knowledge. I really think that, I don't know, I saw this quote once that they said, a man who falls in love with learning will never be bored in his life. And there's just no end to knowledge. And enough knowledge is enough to bring that self awareness to life. Knowledge means just understanding where you are sometimes. That is what it is to be knowledgeable. So I would tell the younger generation, don't take knowledge for granted. Stop jumping to conclusions according to emotion. We have a brain. You're supposed to use your brain. A lot of people say, wear your heart on your sleeve. That's a really stupid thing to do. If you're acting out to how you feel all the time, that means you're probably making a lot of mistakes. So before you act according to emotion, put some thought process into it. And the only way you could keep growing with thought process is if you keep learning. And that's why you need to learn to love to learn, because if you want to go ahead, growth, and it's crazy, but what you knew 10 years ago, the way you thought 10 years ago, the way I thought 10 years ago is not what I think today, and it's probably not going to be what it is in 10 years. So I need to keep up with a certain amount of knowledge for myself if I'm looking to connect with my own personal purpose. If I believe in empathy, if I believe in all these emotions that I want to react to, then I need to know what they mean. Real terminology. What do they mean? Could I filter my thoughts and tell you how I feel? So yeah, that would be my, I guess, big one for the young ones. Learn to fall in love with knowledge and stop working according to emotion.
I like that, because we've arguably outsourced all of our knowledge to the internet. So we have to be able to go out, search it, and bring it in and find the meaning in it. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you today, Isaac.
Thank you so very much. It was my pleasure.
And we'll post all the links and everything so people can find you on the socials and the internet. And I will drop you an email after this. I think there are some things that we do that I think you would just love to look at for no other reason other than that love of learning that you've just mentioned. And if some of the things we do can unlock potential for you and other people, then that'd be my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
It's been fantastic to meet you, and you are truly inspirational. Truly, I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I wish you guys the best again. I couldn't be more grateful for actually being here. You guys bring me purpose. So I'll definitely check the work though, because before we even started, I'm like, I'm going to have to jump on this website. So many people he's helping. He's helped so many different, I got to see what they're doing for real. Like go deep into it. So thank you again.
If you'd like to know more about Isaac and his story, head on over to www.recoverythroughvalues.com. You'll find out more about his work as a motivational speaker and his work with values. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please remember to subscribe and tell your friends. Until next time.